India played a 1-1 draw against England in their first match of the 2022 Women's Hockey World Cup. We'll review India's draw against England and also discuss India's next clash against China in Pool B in this show. Hello and welcome to News9 Special Show. I am Hardik Agrawal and today I am being joined by Sandeep Mishra and Amit Kamath. So Sandeep, how crucial will it be for India to win the upcoming match against China? A win against their next opponent could possibly assist them in leading the group.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I mean, you really need to top here. The pool topper goes to the quarterfinals. That's what we were discussing. Number 2 and 3 go over to the crossovers. Now,
Right.
crossovers are tricky business. If India win today, they are on 1 point, and China, New Zealand on 1, England on 1. So they're all locked there. If they can clinch today's game, then I think the momentum plus the confidence will be so high for these guys that they will beat New Zealand. That's what it happens in terms of momentum normally.
Right.
So if that happens, then you go to the top, and then probably the goal difference, because if England win all their games, then you're going to be up there, and then the number of goals scored and everything comes into play. So today's is going to decide where you're going to finish. A win takes them right up there, and a win against New Zealand means that again I think the Indian team will go for goals. Also keep looking at what's happening in the other matches, and I think in that way it's really important that they clinch today's game. I mean, no draws are required today at least.
A draw or a loss will put them in a tricky situation?
Completely. I mean, you can still say they'll be number 2, number 3, but one really prefers to be a pool topper here, because then when you play the quarters, then you just might end up with a team that's number 2, number 3 from some other pool. So, and you don't know that yet. So you're going to look for weaknesses, and then you have that time. While the crossovers are being played,
Recovery.
there's this one quarterfinal team that's sitting, training, understanding what's happening all over the place, and waiting for a team to come, which is slightly a more comfortable position than playing crossovers.
Right.
So I think all of this equation, of course, will already be worked out with the management, and I think that's how they're going to approach the game against China.
Rightly mentioned. Now I want to talk about India's clash against England. Want to discuss that why India's rigor waned down in the second half, from 13 circle penetrations to merely 4 in the second half, and from 6 PCs in the first to just 1 in the second. So what went wrong in the final 30 minutes for the Indian women's team?
I think if you actually see the third and the fourth quarter, Martins played brilliant. She was all over the place. She was the one, she's the central, the core of the midfield. She was the one holding the ball. She was the one giving it back. She was the one taking it forward. She held that game, and I think that is where Neha should have come in. She should have played a little up. Now that's an opinion, because what the coaches out there think that, okay, can we play 1 step back, 2 step back, play a little defensive, try and hold and look for a counter. Maybe that was the equation out there. But for me, it was very simple that if somebody is holding a central midfield position and rotating the ball over, using the left and the right flank to create attacks, you need to break it there. Because what happens is then under the pressure, you keep rolling back. It's another matter that part of that entire thing was that the Indian defensive line was very good that day. Not conceding a PC is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, like it really rarely happens in that sense. But also not scoring off 7. I mean, you scored 1 hit the cross piece. I think a couple of more goals, you would have clinched the match. But overall, I still felt a 3-1 scoreline was India's, because all the shots that Savita saved were straight on. A couple of them were angled. The ones that India couldn't score are the ones which we need to talk about a little, because I think that's where they faltered. One was a 20-year-old and the other one, Navjot. She is experienced, and for both of them to falter and not look for the angle, I think that was the problem out there.
Right. As you mentioned about PCs, we also have Amit here in the studio, here with us. So, Amit, England couldn't win any penalty corners. What does this say about the defensive unit of Indian hockey team?
I think India, and particularly defenders like Deepgrace Ekka or even somebody like a Navjot who was falling back and helping the defenders out, they were very good yesterday. Like they weren't hassled into, despite the pressures that was being put on them on by the England players, they weren't, rushing the ball out. They were calmly passing the ball out. It didn't feel like, they were under stress. So that bit was very good. Of course, once they moved the ball out of the circle, what happened is a different question altogether.
And also, India had 7 penalty corners, but they could only convert 1. So, are they relying heavily on Gurjeet, Amit, and should there be more variations or other players who must be taking the responsibility at PCs?
I think that is an Achilles heel of the Indian team right now, the penalty corner routine, because right now it's a very established fact that Gurjeet is our top penalty corner specialist, and when she's there on one of the castles, the first rusher of the other side always knows where to go. If you notice, the one goal that India scored was when the ball was, it was sent to somebody else instead of Gurjeet. And the first rusher of England went straight to Gurjeet, then had to change direction midway, and that is why there was that extra 1 second of gap that India got, and that is eventually what led to the goal.
Right.
So we need that a lot. I know Deep Grace is the second option for PCs, but then Deep Grace still slaps the ball as opposed to dragging the ball, which is why it's allowing a lot of these first rushers to come much more closer. If you noticed in yesterday's game, the England first rusher was a little wary of approaching or running straight into the line of fire of Gurjeet's drags, which is why the first one, if you saw the second one of India and the first one of Gurjeet, it went with such vicious power that I don't think anybody would have bothered to put their body on the line.
Right, Amit. As we discussed the weaknesses, now let's talk about some of the strengths that Indian team put forward in the match against England. So, what were the positives from the match against England, Sandeep?
I think Vandana is really using that experience. I mean, that goal she scored, I mean, it could have been a very hasty one. She could have just rushed in and tried and did something with it. But she exactly knew that there was a second and a half before the defender could come on. And she so beautifully just flicked it high, so that nobody could actually reach it. And in fact, if you see the replays, you can see a English hockey stick, swishing by, but the ball had already passed. So Vandana is using tremendous amount of that experience. Grace as usual, but I think the defender who caught my eye at least during these clusters that were forming inside the striking circle for us was Udita. She was very neatly, very calmly taking the ball out, understanding where she was, where the other players were. Those were great. Savita was, of course, brilliant. And I think Neha, as we said, needs to really bring her game up. She's playing at a level, she's probably playing at 6, 7, that's what was against England. But the kind of a player she is, the kind of skills she has, the kind of shoulder dodges that she can do, she needs to play up. She needs to use that entire space. I mean, you see the third quarter, honestly, you see the third quarter, you will only see Martins. You don't see anybody else. Now, that's the reason why she could completely dominate, because you have the space, and then you have enough space to spray any through pass to the left, to the right, to the middle, wherever. That's where Neha needs to come in. She needs to build up that and take charge and start throwing the ball up for Navjot, for the others, for Lalram. I mean, she was also pretty brilliant in that. Whenever she had the ball, you knew there was something that's going to happen. And I think that's where most of the strengths of the Indian team should come out today, should come out against New Zealand. They should play a little up and not be really bothered. But yeah, but having made that point, I'll also say that they didn't want to lose against England. Rather, go in for a draw, have at least a share of the points, than losing and finding yourselves in a very difficult position in the pool. So a little bit of that defensive, whatever we saw, was probably because that was playing on their mind.
Yeah, defensively they were quite good.
Yeah.
But talking about their next opponent, China, there are some managerial changes. So how prepared should be Indian team for the managerial changes, and how different could be the Chinese team?
I think there could be an advantage here is that Chopin probably knows Alison Anand pretty well, you know. I mean, Anand's been coaching for a long time. And I have seen her as a player, 98 World Cup probably in Utrecht, where Rick Charlesworth was the coach of the Australian team and she was the main playmaker centre forward. At that time, there were headlines in most of the papers that called Alison Anand the Maradona of women's hockey. I mean, she was that good. She was probably at that point of time, and even now, she's probably the greatest hockey player ever in terms of being a centre forward, midfield player and all of that. But for her, coaching has become this new thing, and for India today, they have to watch out. They really have to watch out what Anand brings to the table as a coach, what Taikema brings to the table as a coach. Everybody knows he's a PC specialist and one of the greatest. But there's a third key here. There's a third card which is quite invisible, which is Rick Charlesworth. In my opinion, again, the greatest hockey coach ever, and probably one of the greatest players ever also, because he won the World Cup for Australia as captain in '86. And then for 8 years, the Australian women's team was unbeaten under him, unbeaten. So all these three, it's almost going to be a chess game today. What they bring to the table, what Shopman and her management bring to the table, and how India counters China. It's going to be a great game to watch, especially when you look at a midfield. I think everything is going to center around that, and this is where the beauty of the game will come out today, as to how coaches can maneuver teams around like you do on a chessboard. I think that's where the advantages would be, and Shopman probably understands Anand more than anybody else, and that's a great advantage.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Amit. You gave us some incredible insights, and now India will be playing against China at 8 p.m. today. This was a fun chat. Watch out for this space. That's it from this episode. We'll be back with more interesting news, insights, facts and figures. Until then, keep following us on our social media platforms. Also, if you like this show, then don't forget to press the like button. For more such videos, press the bell button. Thank you. This is Hardik Agrawal signing off.